How'd that budget go?
Outcome of the state budget, but as Jesse will second, we are still very much negotiating, but hope to be done soon. There certainly has been a lot of discussion, which is great. As many people know, there were a lot of things in the governor's budget this year for housing, which is exciting, and there's continues to be a lot of discussion about all those items that include a new 421A tax exemption called 45X, an extension of the old 421A tax exemption to allow projects that are have already qualified for that benefit to have a longer completion time, a tax exemption for commercial conversions to allow commercial buildings in the city of New York to both convert but also require affordability there. Some language around legalizing basement apartments, a lifting of the FAR 12 cap for residential construction in the city of New York. So lots of things. I think it's fair to say everything is still on the table and still being discussed. And Jesse might know better than I do, but I think we still have a little while to go until I think we're closed out. Jesse, you would second that?
We continue to make progress.
There we go.
Can someone ask Jesse, is there ever a time when the beard is just too long?
Oh, I got to see the beard in person. I haven't seen Jesse in a long time, but since I've been up in Albany a lot, we've now been together. We don't just have like a Zoom relationship now.
Yeah, no budget, no shave. So,
that's what I heard. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So we'll be back in May when the budget will be done, and we'll update on what actually got done.
It will be done.
It will definitely be done, and I think there will be a lot in it for housing, which will be very exciting, and we'll give more specifics when that all happens. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Any questions for Ruth Ann? I mean, it's, again, these things are all in flux. It's in the papers. It's public information, but just giving directors a chance to ask questions. Well, hearing none, Lauren, let's continue. We're going to do item 1, right? Which is minutes. Please. We've got to get through minutes. So item 1, minutes of the audit committee meetings of HFA, AHC, SONYMA, MBBA, and TSFC, which were held on January 25th, 2024, shall be deemed approved, absent corrections for members or directors. Anybody have comments on the minutes from the January meeting? Good. We'll now move to the Audit Committee shared action items. So it's item 2 in today's agenda, resolution recommending the approval of the Accounts Payable Review Internal Audit Report. And we're going to get our super audit expert, Khanim Babayeva, to present this to us, I believe. Good morning, Khanim.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I have 2 items for today's meeting. I will start with accounts payable audit. So we performed that audit according to the last year plan. And the audit was success. Management accepted our recommendations. And audit was done exactly after a new system was implemented in the accounts payable process. So associated control processes, associated changes in policies and procedures, steps in workflow, everything was reviewed. And we came up with 2 main recommendations: that updating the current process, controls, and procedures related to accounts payable manual, including establishing and financial threshold, addressing workflow, control efficiencies, and developing a data retention policy was important, and management accepted this recommendation. And another big recommendation was enhancing the technical controls with an SAP system pertaining to access control, user identification, and monitoring. So we discussed these findings in details with all relevant parties, including finance department and IT department, and recommendations were accepted. We will monitor this implementation of this recommendation during 24. So today I'm asking to approve this report.
Great, thank you.
Any questions for Khanim? The period you looked at is 2020, 2023.
Right.
And that's overlaps with the whole SAP issue, right? Like changing over the AP system to the SAP system.
Correct.
Good.
Correct.
Great.
So we looked at their process, not pre-SAP,
Yeah.
but after
Right,
SAP,
because-
so it will be efficient.
Right, perfect. Okay, good. Great. Any other questions or comments on this audit? Very important. Thanks, Eddie.
And now before all 5 committees is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and seconds previously recorded, all voting in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Don't go too far.
Yes.
Number 3, a resolution recommending the approval of the internal audit plan for January to December this calendar year, 2024. Back to you, Hanim.
Yes, so I apologize for not bringing this to you in January because as internal audit standards requires, we need to base our internal audit plan on risk assessment. Since risk assessment was not finalized at that time, we held the internal audit plan approval till today, but we actually started to implement that plan already. But it's still very live document. So at any given moment of time, if any of the board members or executive management team will decide to adjust that plan, we are ready to consider and we will present it again for your review and approval if this document will be adjusted based on the agency's needs. But usually, we base it on risk assessment results. And this year plan consists of 7 audits and additional ad hoc audit request if it will be needed. So mainly it's about compliance, operational, information technology, financial audits, and third-party bank, servicing bank audits. This approval is required by internal audit charter, and I'm presenting this plan for your approval. If you have any requests, questions, I'm ready to accept.
Just a timing question, Hanim. I mean, you just did the AP audit and presented it to us, but it's not on the chart because was that in the 2023 plan?
Yes.
And it rolled over to 2024.
Yeah, since we finalized it late in the year,
yeah,
the approval is happening.
It's last year's work plan, but you bring it to the board. So we might look at something like third-party audit. You might finish that by December, and we'd see it maybe a year from now.
Correct.
Right. Just in terms of how the timing, calendar year versus when the board sees the final reports. Yeah. Great. And I just want to say that I think we all appreciate your flexibility. The idea that during the course of this year, things can change and something could trigger their need for an internal audit that you and your team would take on and adjust the schedule accordingly. That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions or comments for Hanim on the plan for 2024? Well underway into the 4th month already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential, well, 3 anyway, audits in motion.
Yes, they actually are.
Yeah.
So first 3 are already started or already finished. So the next audit committee, I will be presenting the results of this audit.
I just flagged because we brought it up in prior meetings that when we do the audits of third-party vendors, partners like servicing banks, questions that have come up around if those banks are the victims of some kind of cyber fraud or hacks, how do we know that right away? Remember, this came up several months ago, and I trust in your audit you'll look at the communication between us, our agencies, and those third parties, and again, at the end of breaches or hacks and cyber crimes.
Yes,
Great.
yes, absolutely.
Great. Good. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Hanim. Lauren, do we do this?
Now before all 5 committees is a resolution that is transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and seconds previously recorded, all voting in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Number 4 on our agenda this morning, the financial statement updated for the first quarter of fiscal 2024, which is really the third quarter of fiscal 2024 for AHC. And that should be, well, that is in the board materials here. And that doesn't require board action, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. There is no unfinished business, which is a nice way in government of saying we're done. so we can ask for motions and seconds to adjourn each of the 5 agencies, members, and directors, the audit committee meetings. This is the closure of our audit committee meetings. Lauren?
Assuming the first and second previously entered for all 5 audit committees, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried and the meetings are adjourned. The next audit committee meetings are scheduled for Thursday, June 13th, 2024.
Maybe.
Maybe.
No.
Scheduled.
Well, okay, because I know we're going to talk about it later, but
We're
for
gonna-
May,
yeah.
all right, so June 13th is probably
June
still
13th
good,
is
but I
yeah.
know there's some talk about the May meetings.
Yes.
Pardon me, I was confusing May and June, but we'll assume then that this will happen again. We'll meet on June 13th.
Yes.
We're now going to move on to agenda items for the governance committee. And item 1 is the minutes of the governance committee meetings that we had for HFA, AHC, SONYMA, MBBA, and TSFC back also on January 25th, 2024. Those minutes shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members and directors. Anybody have any comments on the minutes from January? Hearing none, we'll move to the governance committee shared action items, starting with number 2. We need to, could people please mute their phones? I think we're getting some feedback. Oh, wait a second, that's Andy.
Yeah. Andy, can you hear us?
Here he comes,
Yeah, can you hear me?
live
Yes.
from Electric Tower.
Hello?
We can't, good morning, Andy, we can hear you. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm well, we're struggling over here to try to access this meeting. We're doing all the passcodes and passwords and you know, I got 3 experts in here that are doing their best, but it's still not allowing us access into the meeting. So we just called, or Lillian just called me. But I mean, I can hear you guys, but it doesn't show us as being participants because we can't get in.
Well, your name is on our screen. Your voice is coming in loud and clear. And Ruth Ann, let's ask Ruth Ann. Yeah, all right. Well, we're going to try. We've got our technical experts trying to hook up the video connection for you. I wonder if this is a lingering effect of the eclipse and the governor being at Niagara Falls with you to watch the eclipse the other day. You know, some solar dust or something.
But you know what? You know what I'll do is I'll forward a picture of the full eclipse to you, Ken, and then you could spread it around to everybody. But
I would love to.
Overcast. It was overcast. We had sunny days. We had sunny days for 3 days before. It got cloudy, and the next day was sunny without a cloud. Only in Buffalo does that happen.
Oh, Andy, I've regret that I asked. Well, thank you for that update, and I hope we can get you dialed in to the screen.
Okay,
in the meantime,
well,
again,
like I said, I'm on the phone, but I have Margaret is here helping out, and I'm able to see the book, but I guess I missed the audit committee, so I apologize for that.
No problem. We'll keep moving forward. Item 2.
Okay.
As we're up to now is resolutions approving various contracts monitored by the Facilities Administration Department. And I think Lisa's got this one. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. We're asking for a 1-year extension for 3 of our facilities contracts. One is with Deluxe Delivery, which provides off-site storage. Another one is with Fire Services, which maintains our fire equipment.
Yeah.
And the last one is with E.G. Bowman, and that provides insurance brokerage services to the agency. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Anybody have questions for Lisa on the extension of these contracts? Great, Lauren, let's do it.
And note that this is before the HFA and SONYMA committees. So now before HFA and SONYMA committees is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously recorded, all voting in favor, please say aye.
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 The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
There is no unfinished business for the governance committee, so we'll ask for motions in second, please, to adjourn each of the 5 agencies, members, and directors' governance committee meetings this morning.
So assuming the first and seconds previously entered for all 5 committees, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried and the meetings are adjourned. And the Governance Committee is also scheduled to meet on Thursday, June 13th, 2024.
And I'm not going to mess with your calendar. We're now going to schedule. No, I trust you. I believe you. We'll now move to the board meetings to start with the presentation of items shared by HFA, AHC, SONYMA, MBBA, and TSFC. Item number 1 this morning, the minutes of the HFA, SONYMA, AHC, and the HFA Finance and Program Committee meeting, which we held last month on March 14th, 2024, and MBBA and TSFC meetings back on January 25th, 2024. The SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee meeting we held on February 15th, 2024. All of those minutes from all of those meetings shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members or directors. Again, if anyone has any comments, corrections for any of the minutes in any of those meetings going back to January, February, March, please let us know. Hearing none, we'll move on to shared information items before all of the boards. These are items 10 to 16 on this morning's agenda. As usual, there are no presentations on these items unless board members want to ask questions or can flag any of these things. Otherwise, they're informational. Number 10 is a review of the quarterly investment report for HFA, SONYMA, MBBA, TSFC as of January 31st, 2024, and for AHC as of December 31st. A month prior, 2023. 11, again, this is in your board materials, current agency procurements and contracts in the lobbying restricted period. We do that every month, of course. 12, review of the agency's quarterly procurement report for the period ending January 31st, 2024. So that's the procurement report of all the agencies through January 31st, a couple months ago. 13, a review of the quarterly report on the financial status of existing hedges for the quarter ending January 31st, 2024. That's a SONYMA and HFA item. They are the beneficiaries of the hedges. And 14, financial statement update for the first quarter fiscal 24, which is also the third quarter of fiscal 24 for AHC. They always lag us. And 15 is the administrative budget report as of January 31st, 2024. That's an HFA SONYMA item. And 16 is the MIF, or Mortgage Insurance Fund, activity report. This one gets us nervous. There's less and less activity. For March 2024, we had a good conversation with Mike on that last month. There being no further business for the MBBA and TSFC boards, here's where Andy's still trying to dial in, and we're about to adjourn the meeting. We're going to take his vote so that we can adjourn. No. Sorry about that, Andy. Short agenda today. Lauren will ask for motions and seconds. I could slow down. Motions and seconds to adjourn the MBBA and TSFC meetings. And for this, Andy, we'll need your vote. So hold the line. Lauren?
Here we go. Assuming the first and second previously entered. How about if I say so moved?
You gotta wait for your cue.
Assuming the first and second previously entered for MBBA and TSFC, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motions are carried and the meetings are adjourned. And the next MBBA and TSFC board meetings are scheduled for June 13th, 2024.
Andy, in June, in a couple of months, when we see you again, promise we'll fix the technology there so we can get you on the screen appropriately. Thank you for your patience today. Thanks for schlepping into the office for a short agenda. All right.
Thank you so much. You got to thank the personnel here. They were doing their best to try to access the code for the meeting.
We will.
Okay.
The commissioner's
you guys
here.
Have a great day.
All right, you too, Andy. Thanks again. Take care. We'll see you in a couple months. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. We're going to move back to item 2 and shared consent items that are items for HFA, SONYMA, and HTFC. And as a reminder, 2 is a resolution recommending the approval of the quarterly bond sale report of the first quarter ending January 31st, 2024. And this is an HFA SONYMA item. Any questions about the bond sale report? And Laura, let's memorialize it.
Now before the HFA and SONYMA boards for approval is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with therewith. Assuming the first and seconds previously recorded, all voting in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody. Number 3, a resolution for approval to enter into sustainability and environmental technical assistance contracts. Again, this is HFA, HTFC. This is in the materials. Do we have someone?
Samantha, yep.
Oh, good. Good morning.
Here to talk about these.
Excellent.
Thank you.
you want to give us a brief overview of what this is?
I'd be happy to. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We are seeking authorization from you all to enter into contracts to form a panel of various vendors to serve as the Sustainability and Environmental Technical Services Assistance Panel. This panel will serve 5 different technical service areas, fulfilling a broad range of services and provide us the opportunity to enter into future contracts with any of these firms that we're seeking approval to enter into contracts with before you today. Those 5 areas of service include things such as training services of a technical nature, technical assistance, energy auditing services, energy benchmarking services, and finally, program and policy design. This will allow us to deploy and continue to deploy all of our sustainability needs for the agency over the next multiple years without having to do individual procurement processes, but rather have a bench of people that can serve in any of these areas. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have about our request today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just 2 questions. One, and if you just help me out, perhaps some of my colleagues as well. What would qualify as, we're getting feedback here, in terms of sustainability needs, what does that encompass, please?
Sure. So we broke it into 5 different areas because it's pretty broad sweeping. So I'll give you like 2 examples from, I would say, the opposing sides. One, we oftentimes are getting new funds that are coming into the market. And so we might need additional support with program design. So there's been a lot of federal money that's been potentially available and additional state money. So some services might look like support building and launching a program specifically around either, let's say, solar or something like that. That could be a foreseeable need that we might have. And then on the other side, really tactically, we know that we need support doing energy audits, which is going into buildings and assessing in our existing portfolio what the potential might be to decarbonize or to start to switch out our mechanical systems for electric heating instead. So really, all the way on the ground doing the work in our buildings potentially, all the way up into doing some of our program design support that we don't have the capacity in-house for new opportunities to bring to the agency.
Okay, and like as you were speaking, I have a 3rd question, but number 2,
You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, it reminds me of, yes. In any event, in terms of participation and engagement of minority-owned firms, what are we looking at there, please?
Of which
minority-owned firms, I'm sorry.
So we did, when we sent out the RFP information, we sent it out to over 58 MBE firms, 61 WBE firms, 11 MWBE firms, and over 1,000 SDVBOB firms were on our list that received the package.
Okay, and we don't have a yield yet in terms of the firms that we're getting?
Yes, we do know that there was 1 respondee for a WBE and 1 for an MWBE. And I think that's all on record for their firms in terms of the total of 17 responses that we did get.
And what can we attribute that to?
From my experience in this space, especially on the more technical side of things, there are not a lot of firms that do this work, period. Let alone MWBE firms or owned and operated MWBE firms that are doing energy auditing and technical service work like benchmarking, which were some of our requests here.
Okay, obviously that's something that hopefully we can look into going forward. Last but not least, and Mr. Chairman, if you will excuse the prognosis that we are possibly 12 months away from Donald Trump being president. Okay, there are people who know a lot more than he does about government policy generally, including the kind of funding for housing that comes from the federal government, who are looking to obviously eviscerate and just get rid of. What do we know about those plans? Because they're not secret. And what can we do to kind of have a bulwark here within this agency and related agencies? Because if that happens, we don't want to be caught short.
to defer to other folks at the table here.
Nice handoff.
The commissioner's looking at the chairman to answer this question. Thank you, Commissioner. One is to be really clear on the distinction between state resources that we use for kind of a green agenda and sustainability, and the bulwark being to work with the governor and the legislature to lock in the state resources that support this very important work. And then honestly, you know, again, this is just going to be like my opinion for what it's worth. The governor's office has a Washington presence. We have lobbyists for the state in Washington. We have some of these firms, I'm looking at the ones on the list, are actually very large. Turner Construction. I mean, these are powerful firms that have a vested interest in federal support for this work, because we'll be the conduit for them to get paid to do it, right? So, you know, I think that's a really important point, Professor Ford, that we've got to play some offense here and think, again, identify the federal support. A lot of it is coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of it is coming out of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act.
No, pardon me, but that's my point, of course.
And how do you lock that in while you still can?
Well, A, how do we lock that in? And in the event of this apocalyptic vision that I'm providing here, which sadly is not too far from what it might be, what steps are we taking now to protect the mission of the organization in terms of what may be coming out of Washington? Because if whatever happens in Washington is going to affect the New York State, and it's going to affect all of us.
Yeah.
Sadie.
I want to speak to both of your comments. So on the MWBE and engineering firms, historically that industry has been very white. In the IRA and the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, where a lot of these new resources are coming through, there's a Justice 40 overlay. A minimum of 40% of money has to be invested in justice communities, and the recipients, the awardees, are very committed to that, reaching beyond just putting the money in those neighborhoods, but reaching people of color, empowering them, workforce development. There's an enormous market building piece of those awards that the awardees are very committed to. So the hope is that we intentionally, very, very intentionally pull forward those organizations. We're working with universities to do training, education. So it's a recognition that the industry is not one that is populated by a lot of MWBE, but that needs to be in this administration. It's a huge priority. On this federal grant side, the awards have been made. Contracts are to be executed for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is where I think the majority of the resources will come through. Contracts are intended to be executed by July 1st, and the awardees are charged with getting dollars out the door in advance of an election, and certainly in advance of January 20th, or whenever that might be, that having the president, so that there's minimal criticism of the award. Now, having said that, I'm sure the first thing they'll do is pull us down to Washington and put us across the table into hearings and try to delay. All we can do is try to work with partners like New York State and others that are credible partners to get the money out. We're also, it's a national program, work to get it out in all states, Republican and Democratic states, to show and then really work with the states. I think the states actually play a very big role in getting them to support the program, whether it's a red state or a blue state, because this money is going to be invested. So we're going to try, but politics on this particular issue are ugly. It's very bipartisan. So, but you know, we're hopeful that we're in contract soon enough, and that we're deploying capital, and that protects us from any. They can't claw the money back once we're in contract.
Well, okay. I'll accept that, certainly, and
it's cold comfort.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that for an agency like this one, and any governmental agency, and I certainly understand the state funds, but this federal government is kind of like the mothership of what we're talking about here, and there is the organization I'm trying. It's not the Federalist Society. There's another group that has been spending a good bit of time looking at every single federal agency and figuring how to either decommission it or certainly to cut back. And I'm saying that if we here get caught with our socks down, I'm trying to clean it up for airplay here, that'll be our fault, because we've been warned. Okay, and so I just would suggest, however that might take place, that I understand that we have an office New York State office in DC, of course, and all of that. And I'm not suggesting that SONYMA may all of a sudden have a presence in DC, but somehow we've got to start thinking about what if around here. Otherwise, we'll be caught short. The other thing I want to mention, I'm glad you mentioned that with respect to the outreach for minority firms involved in the kinds of activities. When I got out of law school, literally 50 years ago, I would say, okay, I understand that. Okay, but it's been 50 years, and literally there are hundreds, if not thousands, of graduates. I'm just thinking of schools like Caltech and MIT, who not all are employees, but rather have their own firms. Okay, and in that range of technical activity, perhaps they're not in New York State for good reason, right? And so perhaps we can give them a reason to be in New York State. I've seen that with respect to construction firms who, I'm trying to remember the firm, just don't the name of the firm right now that's involved with the JFK expansion and the LaGuardia expansion. You know what I'm talking about, of course. They came from out of state. And now they're here in New York State. I forget the woman's name and her family and all, but they're doing billion-dollar projects. Now, 10 years ago, we said, gee, we don't have any firms around here that have that capability. But so maybe we have to import until we have to develop a pipeline that says, yes, New York State is also amenable to these types of initiatives. I think it came from Tennessee, but you get the idea. So, perhaps we need to cast a broader net, is what I'm saying, in order to do that.
I will just add some level of, sorry, I was kind of thinking about your question when you asked it, why everyone was answering, but I work really closely with our state partner agency, NYSERDA, and they're doing a lot around workforce development, and there's actually a low income energy task force where we're talking about an energy equity collaborative, which brings together grassroots community groups that are trying to help solve this issue amongst others. So there's a lot of work to develop a pipeline. I think we just, we sent that out and made sure that group knew this was happening as well. It's just, the control of who responds, but I completely understand your perspective. And
well, again, I'm just saying there's firms and, again, I'm thinking particularly California, Georgia are places that have over the many years been very engaged in building, in initiating and building Black-owned firms that are in very technical and very large-scale projects, and perhaps we need to cast a wider net. I know I'm repeating myself, but I hope I'm getting my message through. Thank you.
Excellent point. I wonder if you're thinking of Cheryl McKissick.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
An amazing firm. My question about this is also thank you for the effort on the outreach to the MWBE and WB firms, but unfortunately the result is 1 out of 17, right? So effort counts, but not as much as results. And one thing I notice is what a lot of the firms have in common is their statewide reach. And that might have been a criterion that you were looking for firms that could really help us all across the state. But by definition, that's how you get a Turner, an Arup, and some of these are global firms, actually, their reach. And so I'm just thinking maybe when you go next time to work on the panel, if you do the procurement in a way where you are open to firms that are smaller and local and they don't have statewide capacity, but they're small and they're minority owned, that's a way for them to get in on this, right? Because again, if I'm looking at some of these are, HRA is listed twice. I'm not sure. No, it's HSA. I apologize. But that's a California-based firm with a big office in New York. Now it's a New York firm. We love everybody knows HRNA. We were just talking about them. But these are big statewide firms. And my point is an obvious one, and you know this, Lisa. When we shape procurements, we need to be thoughtful of how we will get the respondents that we want. And when we want MWBE firms, we have to think about the requirements we're embedding in the RFP. We may have put things into this RFP that smaller minority-owned firms said, oh, I can't do that. I'll never get that job. I'll never make that panel because I don't have an office in Buffalo. Just a thought I think it's just a question. How long is the panel in place for? When's the next time we rework?
5 years. 5 years.
Can we do it for less? Is it too late to?
One point, when someone is selected off of the panel, they will then have to demonstrate if there's subcontracting opportunities.
Oh no, they
have to go.
That would be the expectation that Turner would do. Absolutely. They have to meet a 30% goal, right?
And Carrie also instituted a survey that she was asking all of the respondents to talk about their established relationships with MWBE. So we're definitely trying to do a better job of working with companies that are sharing our values.
And hopefully through the subcontracting, they'll get experience that perhaps
but why 5 years? Anna, we locked into that.
It was
Sorry.
a very large procurement process. We actually started this in June,
I got it.
even more than that.
Right.
June, we started writing the RFP.
But we can't get another firm, there won't be another procurement to change the makeup of the panel for 5 years.
This particular panel, that wasn't the intention, but could there be a case where we will have to go out for something that was outside of the scope of work that we tried to conceive? I think the answer to that could be yes, but that's an if.
Be careful, because panel participants would cry foul if you, right?
Okay.
Actually, this is the first procurement that we did, not only with HFA and HTFC, but DHCR as well.
Yeah.
And so we had to abide by state laws. And so we did anticipate.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We did anticipate. This is the first procurement we have done, not only with HTFC and HFA, but we partnered with DHCR. And we had to abide by state rules.
Right.
HFA will have to abide by the state rules. So we did anticipate that perhaps we'd like to refresh the panel. So I do have a clause in the RFP that says we can open the panel up and invite more firms in without doing a full-blown RFP.
Okay. That's super
really
important, Lisa. Thank you for doing that, because you can't lock this in for 5 years, and then we can't have this discussion again for 5 years, right? So that flexibility is helpful.
Want to go first?
James,
No, go for it.
James or James?
James and James. Both with white shirts today. You want to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. The question is, since we're doing like a study of the MWBEs and how to get them associated and acclimated with actually going through the contract process and everything, that's going to take a year to put in place. So like you were saying, with this panel being out there for 5 years, they're going to be sitting there for 4 years, being able to oversee everything that's going on with the panel itself and dictating policy. Would it be possible to put in a sub-panel for the new MWBEs that would be coming in, or any other individuals that would be coming in, and make it a requirement of those individuals on the panel to assist those in the sub-panel to be able to bring them up to speed? And then for us to be able to see in that panel what they're actually doing to make that 30 to 40% requirement of participation. Then the other piece of that is, in the subcontracting side of it, they're going to be going out to union contracted workers. A lot of individuals of color are not a part of those unions. So how are you going to get individuals of color to be able to participate in these in certain communities when they're not even in the unions in the first place?
I'm not sure this particular scope of work, because it's not actual construction work, would have that union requirement. Like, we're not talking about construction service work here. We're talking about inspection work. So I'm not sure that would, for these 5 scopes of work, if that would be an issue. On your first point, I defer to Lisa.
If you can see, we can't change the scope of the original RFP, but if you can see stretching within the policy panel to, when we call new firms in, to give them work to address his issue, I think we can do it that way.
Okay. Yeah,
The sub-panel is possible.
I'm definitely on the side of we wanted as many firms in this panel as possible. That was the goal. We did not want to limit. We wanted to be able to access as many different agencies and
there may be
services.
A way, to James's second point, to have a list, and maybe it's not based on a procurement, it's like an availability list of smaller engineering, legal, advisory, environmental firms that are certified MWBEs. They're not on the panel, but they're made available to these GCs, like these are big companies, so that, right? Yeah. So I think that would enable, like if Turner gets, $1 million from us to go do some, energy retrofits, but then you say, here are the MWB firms we recommend, we want you to consider subbing to, and they sub the work out to minority-owned firms, and that's getting us to 30, 40%. That works, right? So, or it's helpful. It's not as, it's capacity building.
Yeah.
Could you,
there's going to be a lot of procurement from the federal awards for the same services, and so that's more national. To Professor Ford's comment, we would capture organizations outside of New York much more broadly, and there will be a high priority for MWBE there as well. So we and other awardees can certainly share that with our partners like New York State. So I think that's a collaborative effort across this particular initiative, and I think there's a lot of other people that are going to be looking at this. So.
Yeah, good.
Could you,
one thing I would say, go ahead. Yep.
Could you clarify which, I got a little confused earlier. I know that we were talking about this is also potentially applying to HCR, the agency. Could you just walk through again which authorities and if the agency that this panel is applying to?
For this meeting, it's HFA and HTFC, but DHCR was also a part of this RFP, so we will be sending contracts to the controller for approval.
Okay, thank you. But just for the authorities, it's just, you said HFA and HTFC?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. James.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that's interesting is, for example, AEA, which I think we've talked about in the past, is a nonprofit, right? There are other organizations that are not major firms that are doing a lot of this technical assistance. Emerald City Collective, you have Elevate Energy out of Chicago, all part of this relay network of nonprofits. Elevate is amazing in terms of providing job training to people of color in Chicago and throughout the Midwest. You know, you have Emerald City in DC that's doing that. So the question is, like, was this RFP, like, was it weighted towards firms versus folks who are actually mission aligned with regard to what we're doing, and those who actually can, I mean, like, from the MWBE perspective, Kinetic Communities Consulting Corporation is amazing and has been incredibly valuable to the New York City Accelerator and supporting, especially in working with, like, that is the best of the best you know, in terms of New York City or New York State in terms of, you know, but I think that idea of, one, there's going to be so much federal funding. You're going to have more firms that are coming into the space in the next year to 2 years than there's ever been. So a long contract is going to, you know, potentially box people out from what is the next great economy and the next great flow of funds. And so that ability also, I think, to think from, you know, a mission perspective of how do we make sure that folks who are like missed out on applying, or folks that, like, you know, through this relay network that is creating these firms throughout the United States, we can support those especially nonprofit organizations who are in this space, so that they are like, who are not competing against some of these larger firms, but they have a mission that are also doing job training. They may not be an MBBE, but they are actually supporting MWBEs in a way that others are not. Right. And I think that that is something that's very important to consider, because we're just saying 17 firms, but like, I think that not differentiating, for example, AEA as a nonprofit is a very important factor in how we weigh and score that from an organizational perspective. But to the other point is, I just think that, like, we in New York State have to view this as the great building preservation moment, in addition to being an energy moment. Like the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is $27 billion. NYCHA has $72 billion of capital needs, most of which could be considered energy or energy adjacent in many respects. So I think of our ability, and as we think about our design guidelines and how we flow money into this ecosystem, is going to only create more of these firms. So I think it's very important for us to continue to support a lot of the initiatives that we're already doing, and really, you know, work with NYSERDA closer, because I think it's like, that is how we're going to get more national firms that aren't focused on, in some cases, the same level of profit or other things, but are more focused on promoting what they're doing better. But I mean, in terms of the MWE firms, I said, Kinetic KC3 is like an amazing firm, but it's how do we get more KC3s, and how do we get, you know, some of the folks that these other nonprofit organizations, they may be small, and not, as Ken pointed out, they may not be qualifying right now because they're only in one zone of the state, and like they may be boxing them out. So I think that ability to figure out how the procurement, this can be made more flexible, whether it's shorter or a sub panel or whatever the answer, will be important, given what is one of the most rapidly changing environments in terms of jobs and firms in the United States right now.
No, I just want to say that it's disappointing that we didn't get as many MWBs as we'd like, but we tried to make it very flexible. We did not require that you have to provide services statewide. We broke it up into 9 regions of the state. We also, and they could provide services in one or more of the regions. We also could have added a lot of certifications that were required. We did not do that. All of these projects that we'll assign will be subject to a mini bid, and if there are certain certifications required for that particular project, we'll insert it in that mini bid. But we left it extremely loose.
Lisa,
and broad.
thank you for that. We're going to keep going, but I know Professor Ford has a comment.
Yes, and I'll, as I said, I think Al Sharpton once, in introducing speakers, used the 5 Bs, right? Be brief, brother, be brief. So I will do that. I've just a bit of history with respect to this because I was around when the first statewide MWBE program was established by the state of New York. This is like around 82, 83, and I was actually charged with putting that together. And at that time, the strategy was, and since then has been, well, we'll have these firms and we'll get smaller firms and help them develop and what have you. And here we are 40-something years later, and that's the best we've got in terms of trying to address still this dearth of minority-owned firms and particularly black-owned firms in these situations. But Atlanta has a firm, I think it's H.D. Russell firm, which helped build the airport in Atlanta. They're working with the Dormitory Authority. Okay, they came all the way from Georgia to New York to do that. I already mentioned the firm, the McKissick firm, coming from Tennessee. There's other firms around the country. Why aren't they here? Okay, and I'm not asking, for a direct answer. I think that's a question we need to address: is why can't they be brought in and in turn serve as another opportunity to develop local firms as well? But if we restrict ourselves to what's in New York, New York is not the greatest place. Has not been the greatest place for minority-owned businesses. I'll just be straight up with respect to that. So there's other states and other jurisdictions that have been much more aggressive, and the results are there. And so when we keep saying, well, we can't find anybody, whether we're talking about in terms of technical areas or just in terms of general capacity, whatever, they're there. They're just not in New York. Okay, and unless and until we cast a wider net, we'll sit here a year from now, hopefully, and we'll be having the same conversation. Well, 5 years, we're saying right now, and having the same conversation. And I think hopefully we can do better. I'll just leave that as a comment. We have very smart people here at the table and in the agency and in the state of government. And when people put their mind to things, they can figure it out. And so I'm not going to accept the fact it just can't be done. I just can't do that because it's done all in other parts of the country, and the Earth didn't stop moving. There was an eclipse, I understand that, but I don't think it was caused by minority business. And so we can find a way to do better. And I would just encourage and really ask that we be more creative in that regard. I don't have all the answers because I wasn't brought to the table to do that, but certainly to suggest that there may be other answers and other approaches. I respectfully would suggest that we try and do that.
Thank you, Professor Ford. Thank you, Lisa. Let's go back to the proposal before us, Lauren. Okay. What's the action you're requesting? And I think you said it's HFA and TSFC.
It's HFA and HTFC, yes. So now before the HFA and HTFC boards for approval, the resolutions that was transmitted in connection herewith. Assuming the first and seconds previously recorded for HFA and HTFC, all voting in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And the motions are carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you, Ron.
Great. Thank you both. Thanks, everybody. Let's keep moving ahead. We're going to go on to items requiring shared action by HFA Finance and Program Committee, HFA members, SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee, the SONYMA Board. These are items 4 and 8 on this morning's agenda. 4, resolutions. Oh, we're actually looking at a couple projects here, huh? Nice. Resolutions of HFA Finance and Program Committee, HFA members, recommending and approving additional financing for the Pan American Square. The Pan American Square project. The issuance of additional fixed rate and or variable rate tax exempt or taxable bonds in one or more bond series of approximately $6,050,000, and the increase of a first mortgage loan to an amount of $51,150,000, and the making of an additional HFA subsidy loan in an estimated amount of $2,533,066. And this is where National Grid stepped in to say your electricity is going to cost a lot more. Yeah. Oh, my.
Or they said they didn't have enough electricity to give you.
We're back to energy, friends. We're back to energy.
We also have the resolution. We also have the resolution for the SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee.
Oh, I see. We're going to do them together.
Yeah, we're going to do
That's why we've got, okay, Russell and Mike have taken the microphone together. I beg your pardon, 8, the second piece of business here. Resolution of SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee, SONYMA Board, recommending approve another increase of $2,530,000 up to $29,530,000 on an HFA permanent first mortgage loan approved back in December 2022 for 100% mortgage insurance on a $27 million HFA permanent first mortgage loan for the Pan American Square project in Buffalo, Erie County. So we've got, I guess, who's going to go first?
I've got the longer tail.
All right. All right.
So, we're never pleased to have to come back to the board with projects that have already closed on construction.
We don't like having you either.
Yeah. No, I'm usually coming up here trying to, we're excited about
more money?
Yeah, we're coming back for more money. It's more fun to come and explain our new projects and how excited we are about them. We're not happy about having to come back asking for more money because obviously it usually means there are issues that have come up, and these issues exceed what we can address on our own at the staff level. Basically, generally speaking, it means requests for additional financing resources. If it's bonds, we get a 10% cushion. If it's subsidy, we get up to a 15% cushion. In cases where the certain circumstances, we've determined that additional financing is required that exceeds those cushions, we have to return to the board to make these requests. We also strive not to make these determinations with projects that are under construction until later in the phase of construction, if possible. And that's in order to continue to utilize the resources that we have in place with the project teams and formulate a definitive plan of action so we don't have to keep coming back, hopefully. And this is the case for this item, Pan American Square, and it's also going to be the case for the next project I'm presenting, Casa Pasiva, but for completely different reasons. Pan American Square was in Buffalo. We closed in December 2022. The financing was for new construction of 3 buildings, 4 stories, with 150 units in the North Park section of Buffalo, about 5 miles north of downtown. The project is being developed by DePaul Properties. They're a nonprofit team that specializes in upstate and western New York supportive housing. They financed several projects with the agency over the years. We've considered them a good partner with 7 projects financed over the last 9 years, creating over 500 units of supportive affordable housing. As a new construction project under the agency's design guidelines, the project is being built to full electrification. Previous to this project's financing, as part of our typical due diligence review process, we've always required the project's architect to certify the availability of utilities to a new construction project and for preservation. In the case of this project, certification was provided from the architect prior to the finalization of our closing, which is typical. Basically, the architect certifies that utilities will be present. After the project closed in December 2022, however, the agency was made aware that the electric provider, National Grid, had done a re-review, informed the developer that electrical service lines at the project site would not have the capacity to service the buildings as originally thought. National Grid concluded that the closest high-power transmission line, I'm going to get a little technical here, with available capacity was located about 2.5 blocks north and perpendicular to the project on Kenmore Avenue. A new high voltage transmission line would have to be installed in order to feed the proper electrical circuit to the buildings that were to be built. This also includes new underground service and digging up the street. They'd have to run a 2,800 feet line to the project. And finally, National Grid determined that all of this infrastructure work would have to be a cost to the project. The project team spent many months and financial resources looking for alternatives to this determination, possibly even reducing electric capacity needs, potentially converting kitchens and dryers, plumbing equipment to natural gas, which was not a desirable alternative for anyone involved, and or the conversion of the HVAC system to a geothermal one. They've explored all the possibilities, or a combination of gas and geothermal. At the end of the day, it was determined that the cost to convert at a project that's already begun construction was way higher than just going with National Grid's quote. And going with National Grid would allow us to continue to to pursue full electrification, meet our design requirements and the CEI requirements that the project was getting funding for. Note that these infrastructure costs did not include related financial costs that result from a 6-month delay in trying to figure all this out. In total, the increase is about $11.7 million to the project by dealing with this. National Grid is expected to complete the work, by the way, by October this year. So I'm here today because, we issue volume cap bonds in the initial construction closing to meet our 50% tests. That basically means that the bonds have to cover at least 50% of the project's depreciable basis and the land value. With an increase such as this to the project in hard costs and related soft costs, we're in violation of that test presently. And that would be catastrophic in terms of the ability to generate the tax credit equity that's needed to fund the project. So we're basically here today to request additional bonds to meet that 50% test, as well as the additional HFA subsidy to cover the increased costs of the utility work. The other partners in the project are also doing their part. It's not just us. New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance Homeless Housing Assistance Program, HHAP, is providing additional subsidy of about $3.3 million. The developer, DePaul themselves, will contribute their own funding of about $1.2 million. New York State Office of Mental Health, who is already providing debt service on the first mortgage loan, has agreed to increase its funding to match the new higher first mortgage that will be issuing. And they will also contribute their own subsidy of about $2.5 million. Never having had this issue come up before, we've seen it come up again, most recently with the Perry Homes project in Buffalo that we recently closed last week. Now, this, unfortunately, sometimes something has to happen for us to react. And now we're ahead of the game, thankful to say. We now require not just architect certification, but direct certification from the utility company that electrical capacity will be met in a project way before we ever get to a point that we'd be willing to close the project. So this was sort of a wake-up call. In Buffalo, it seems to be a concern. We've been able to mitigate this concern with the projects in our pipeline going forward, thankfully. But it's something that we need to be aware of across the state, even New York City, where there needs to be consideration and coordination between the utility companies and our housing developments. So.
Russell, the National Grid tells you they'll finish the upgrade by October this year. Is that, how confident are we that they'll be able to do that? Because if they more time, it's going to end up being more money, right?
Well, they've already budgeted for it. It's already been accounted for, so we don't expect any further increases. Sounds like everything's going according to schedule. In fact, October seems to be sort of a late date deadline. So.
Maybe it's conservative. Yeah. Joyce.
Yeah. This may be a little an odd question, but it's coming from a different direction. But do you know where the electricity will be generated and what kind of power is going to be used? Is it hydro? Because there's always an assumption that electricity itself is promoting sustainable development, etc. But there's also a question about how that power is being generated.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how Buffalo electricity is generated, but we may have an expert opinion.
Maybe hydro from Niagara.
Well,
yes.
But is
so,
it?
Yes. So I think a substantial portion, I will not misquote my percentages here, of the power that Buffalo gets is hydro. And one of the reasons that the infrastructure in Buffalo is not great is because they invested their money in selling their power outside of Buffalo to other areas of the state. And so as Buffalo continues to grow, they now have to invest in their actual city infrastructure. And that's where Russell's concern is coming from.
Are we in conversations at the highest levels with National Grid about, like a state map or a map of their utility infrastructure where we might have these weaknesses in the future? Because I think this lack of alignment between utility companies and the housing agency and, NYSERDA is a huge problem. So I just wonder.
Yeah. Right. We do most of that through NYSERDA, I was going to say, right?
Yeah.
But
do you want me to speak to that, Ruthann? So we did, because of this project and two others that are in our pipeline, not at the board yet, we wrote a letter to DPS in an effort to help coordinate some of these items and some others with some suggestions that we think would streamline the process, including making available to us as an agency the resource map, so we can have an understanding when we see a project address if there's a
didn't they put in a request for it and provide all of the technical information to National Grid? And now National Grid is coming back saying, you take the $11.7 million hit on this.
One of our other requests in that was currently the process in terms of what the utilities are responsible for is sending back a letter saying, yes, we will provide you service at some cost. We're requesting that DPS mandate the utilities put a little bit more information in that letter and say, yes, we will provide you utilities at a range of a cost, which is not a requirement for the utilities to share that information at the time that they provide that letter that Russell's speaking to. So it's a regulatory DPS utility issue where the utilities are not required to share the cost at the time of saying, yes, we'll give you service.
But I'm saying, like, you can't take a truck battery and put it in a motorcycle. And they already knew this.
I don't disagree with you.
You're pretty fast motorcycle.
I think, go ahead.
Yeah, just one other thing, and this is just kind of FYI, but last year, around this time, this New York State Power Authority approved Quebec hydropower for providing, I don't know the exact measurements of it, a tremendous amount of energy that's water generated coming to New York City. I don't know whether that they're also, I'm sure they're also looking at other statewide opportunities, but Quebec hydropower is something that you just may want to have on your radar going forward, because they are a big player at this point. I think the New York City one is at least $5 billion or something like that.
Yeah, in about 2 years, that project called Hydro Quebec, and they're laying the cable now.
What did I say? Hydropower? Yes.
You had it. You had
okay.
it. But it's and they're very, very long extension cord, if you will, from St. Lawrence Seaway, Lake Champlain, Barge Canal, Hudson River, Astoria, Queens, and LaGuardia's doing the workforce training. So, very familiar with that project. Good one.
This is,
but it doesn't affect Buffalo, to your point.
This is an infrastructure issue, and go ahead, B.
So, having a seat on the NYPA Canals board, there are multiple projects being developed right now in partnership with multiple organizations and companies across the state to enhance the delivery of non-fossil fuel power. So I think if this is an issue, maybe it's time to have a joint conversation or have someone come in and just help show you the map that NYPA has and their timeline for how these projects are going to go online. Because it's a 5, 6, 10-year rollout plan. And if you think
that's a great point, B. And back to the project Russell's describing, this is the history of NYPA. You're talking about, when was it built? The 1920s. The Niagara Falls Power Project on the Niagara River, which is the source of all this electricity that we're talking about, is why Buffalo is called the City of Light historically, and why our colleague Andy Sanfilippo was in the electric building when that's the state office building. And there's this incredible history, and then this sad irony that the City of Light, doesn't have adequate kind of electrical distribution for power generated 20 miles away, or 30 miles away.
It's the transmission lines that are the issue in this project.
No, it's a crazy irony. And I would can we hold some other agency authority, NYPA accountable? Absolutely. Should we get NYPA to the table? Yeah. I would say it'd be a good conversation.
But this is an environmental justice issue, because in some respects, what we also need to think about is like transmission lines are if we do this wrong, like rich neighborhoods are going to electrify because they're going to have enough transmission lines, and you're going to have poorer neighborhoods which don't have think about the fiber optics industry. Like rich neighborhoods have multiple options for broadband. Poorer neighborhoods had none. So the whole concept of like how the power infrastructure, and this is an infrastructure question, and how it's distributed, I think it's the highest level conversations to that point of like, with the Public Service Commission, with the utilities, and saying, like, are you actually providing enough infrastructure into this? And second of all, if the state is going to be providing subsidy to do this infrastructure investment, are we getting a discount on rates for if we're creating this whole new customer base for them? Are we getting a discount on what we're paying in electric for affordable housing if we're the ones that are actually supporting putting more of their basically customers in their thing. So I think that there's a higher level negotiation that should be taking place on the usage, and like if we're investing in infrastructure, our design guidelines are creating more electric demand. And in some cases, like if you have utilities that are either both natural gas and electric, they can fuel switch. But in cases where we're going to end up competing, what has been described as like the utility death spiral in some cases, like we need to be focusing on that infrastructure side and making sure that, you know, we don't end up hurting folks by doing this as well.
So thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Joyce, and then we'll wrap up.
What we're really talking about, I think, is the need for better planning, particularly by the city of Buffalo, which also raises the issue of the transmission lines. The local government usually has some kind of role in that also, no? And I'm wondering, what is the city of Buffalo contributing to this? Are they contributing?
Road opening permit.
Yeah, so National Grid is not connected with the city of Buffalo, so there's no, I guess, obligation for the city to contribute to improve National Grid, which is a private company, equipment.
Right, but for our projects,
I just wonder if all of this is discussed at all these conversations and levels in the context of the law on the book, which is the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, which all of us in New York are required to pay attention to, honor, and comply with. And I think there's a lot of confusion around how we do that. And I think this lack of alignment, I think the broader conversations are really important.
Ruth Ann, is there somebody here at the agencies that's your go-to person for energy issues, like when something like this comes up?
That's why I'm working.
So wow, you wear a lot of hats. Because one idea would be that we designate, you know, a representative here to we got to keep this conversation going, right?
Yeah,
and I think as board members, we'd like to get some response that maybe we would need NYPA or the PSC or, you know, it's hard to get the chairman of National Grid. That's a British company. It's called National Grid because they run the electric grid in Great Britain, as you all know, and parts of the Northeast, headquartered in outside of Boston and Massachusetts.
I was just going to say, and you could talk about this too, that we have a very good working relationship with NYSERDA, and I think, you know, they obviously are sort of as a sort of from an agency, state agency level, are certainly very much in front of this in addition to DEC on the overall Climate Act, but really I think more specifically to our energy issues. We work really closely with them and try to align our sort of efforts with the utilities along with their efforts. So we talk to them monthly. I think Samantha and I together talk to them monthly, and we have sort of a list of issues that we go through that we're trying to get addressed. So we do have some of that, I think, on the sort of state agency level. But we could talk about whether we should bring somebody, is your question sort of like, should we bring somebody here?
I don't know. I'm feeling like we all, if you
responsiveness?
brought Matt Driscoll from NYPA or NYSERDA, what's her name?
Doreen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just think it would be, this is the housing, we're the housing agencies, and every bit of affordable housing that we finance requires electricity.
Yeah.
And we want more, you know, we want as much as possible that to be sort of green electricity.
I will add that I had a great conversation with the chair of DPS, Rory Christensen, and he was really committed to helping to solve some of these issues, and that's what sort of prompted us to write a letter to help give him some examples that he could take to the head of National Grid for the Eastern Seaboard and Con Ed as well. So I think we're starting some of those conversations, but I think it's a great idea. We're happy to.
Does Rudy Winters still run National Grid in New York?
So I think.
Let's go there. B. Yeah, sorry.
Just, I think it's really important. NYPA has been charged by state statute to do some really forward-thinking and social justice work as it builds out these extended delivery methods and development of power in New York. I think the time is right to build a relationship with NYPA around their social justice and their new state-mandated responsibilities around how power is delivered and the building of equity and how that power is delivered.
Yeah. Thanks, B. Andy. Andy, Dave, sorry.
I'll be Andy.
You're as far away as Buffalo, but you're Dave.
Right.
Mr. Capel.
Just to get back to the original sin, if you will, which was the question of, you know, what documentation should have been obtained at the early stages on the availability of the electric. do I understand it that they did get a letter, but that the letter wasn't specific as to the cost, or they didn't get a letter at all?
The cost came later, but the letter, initial certification was that, yeah, we'll provide service. And I imagine it was probably something that was just done, you know,
form letter.
Yeah, it's a form letter. There was a review done. National Grid had to go back and say, hey, someone woke up at National Grid and was like, wait a second. And, you know, by the time they were able to come to a determination, we'd already closed on the financing. Had we known prior to the financing, I'm not sure if there's anything we would have done to mitigate financially. We may have delayed the closing, but at the end of the day, we'd still be having the same conversation in terms of cost.
It's an awful place we find ourselves in, basically with a gun to our heads at this point to agree to it or to kill the project. You know, there's no negotiating leverage there whatsoever.
Yeah.
But like B was saying, there should be a conversation, but is there a city planning model already in place? Because there are 2 other projects that have come up. Is anybody already thinking about how they're going to build this out? Because normally city planning models are 10 years in advance. This is like it just came up.
Well, Perry Homes, which we just closed on Friday, luckily we were able to meet that at the pass. National Grid was able to give us a full breakdown. There was some infrastructure cost that the project bore, much less than this. I'd say it was under $2 million. We were able to incorporate that in, and National Grid wound up taking a brunt of the infrastructure off-site cost to the project. So that was something we were able to do ahead of time. DePaul sort of woke us up to that.
So they're going to run lines to the area. They're not going to develop any infrastructure within itself, because it's like with...
That's a larger question.
Yeah, I'm happy to put together a presentation perhaps. I've done a lot of research, but I'm just trying to be sensitive to the time and y'all's schedule today around how the utility companies design and decide to make infrastructure improvements compared against when they get requests for specific development sites. And those 2 processes are pretty different, and there's no communication. So they don't know what's coming down and who's buying what site and what there could be a development on. So I think that is a friction point or an area for opportunity. But it's a lengthier conversation that I'm sure is maybe not suited for right now, perhaps, unless folks want me to get into it. But
I mean, I think there's a lot of interest here in having this discussion, you know, at a future meeting, May or June, Ruth Ann, and you and the team can figure out.
Great.
I want to go back to B for a second. If we could have a special guest, B, that we could speak to as directors about this issue. You mentioned several state agencies, but, you know, who's on your mind? You're going to send us an email or unmute yourself? We couldn't hear you.
Hold on. I'm sending Justin at NYPA an email right now asking him to think about who he would suggest.
Right, if not Justin himself, but I know exactly what you mean. Thank you for doing that, and I trust you will, you know, share the response that you get with Ruth Ann and the team here, and then we can, you know, have a robust discussion of this and get to James Freeman's point about planning, which seems like that's the big problem.
Well, that's.
And if people like, I can send forward the map. I can send you the map of the projects and where the transmission lines are going, and the beginning of the not the beginning, but the social justice work that is tied to that. I can send you something in an email to you, John, and you can share it with the rest of the group.
Thank you, B.
Just one other.
Sadie's got to go. She's got a 10:30 conflict. We're going to go to Dave, and then we'll move on.
Technical question. I just want to confirm that the good news here is that the Office of Mental Health is paying. They're paying the debt service, right? So there's no real risk to us.
No.
Right. By the way, just as an aside, I get my power in Greenport from Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a marketing. That's a marketing.
Sorry,
you don't believe that, do you? I know. Yeah. Wow. No. It's what are those called? ESCOs. You signed up with an ESCO. Good for you. Well, really interesting. You know we're going to support this, but you see the conversation, pun intended, this has generated. Yeah. So we'll have to continue this seriously then with, you know, pulling the team together, B's contacts for our outreach, because we got to take this to a higher level, this coordination. Mike, you got to tell us a little bit about the second item, right?
Sure.
Not much more, okay?
Okay. So just HFA has asked us to increase our insurance by $2,530,000.
$530,000 to a new loan amount of $29,530,000.
Right, right.
And debt service, as Dave mentioned, is paid by OMH.
Right, okay, good. All right. Lauren, let's move ahead if we can.
Okay, now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA Board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA Finance and Program Committee and HFA Board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. And now before the SONYMA Mortgage Insurance Committee and the SONYMA Board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motions are carried and the resolution's adopted.
All right, thank you. This very interesting item. Thank you both. The next items on the agenda require HFA member action. Again, thank you very much to Sadie. Number 5, resolution of HFA members authorizing and approving the making of an additional HFA subsidy available in an estimated amount of $8 million for Casa Pasiva right here in Brooklyn, New York. Again, Russell's going to handle this one all by himself.
Yeah, this is just HFA subsidy here.
And Russell, I got to start, as I see Sadie needing to leave, I know we have a couple people on tight schedule, so if you can give us the thumbnail version of this one, it might be helpful.
All right, I'll try. I'm sorry. This is going to be kind of complicated, too. I will try to make it as brief as possible. We're back again for more money. This time it's just HFA subsidies, so there's no SONYMA permanent insurance request here, thankfully. It's just additional money. Casa Pasiva has it's a good story and a bad story. It was our very first passive house design project we financed back in 2019. It's 8 walk-up buildings being retrofit for passive house in Bushwick, Brooklyn, about 146 total units. Passive house concepts, you know, air sealing, airtight building envelope, ventilation system, balances of heat and moisture, high performance windows and doors, continuous insulation. To save the buildings up to 80% in energy usage compared to traditional building renovations. The project closed in 2019. Everyone was excited. It was our first passive house project. Riseborough was the Brooklyn-based nonprofit organization, was the original owner of these buildings. They stayed on as a developer for this retrofit. They served as the property manager, or are serving as the property manager. And FGPH was the original contractor selected to coordinate and perform the work. A series of events, some outside the control of the project and some not, over the course of the next 3 years, 3.5 years, have caused the issues that have brought us back here today to request additional subsidy to be made available to get to the project to the finish line for permanent conversion. The retrofit construction work was to occur with tenants in place. COVID hit in March of 2020. That caused severe delays and limitations with worker presence on site, supply delays and supply increased costs. The project was basically delayed in construction for almost a year. Also, the performance of the original contractor was determined to be subpar. The owner, Riseborough, called on their performance bond. Riseborough slowly continued the work themselves until a new contractor, Avante, was selected to take over. Thankfully, their work was completed successfully, and passive house has been achieved. So that's the good news of the project. But in addition to the delays, this, of course, increased costs across the board for construction, for fees and monitoring, increased expenses, insurance. I think we all know about what's going on with insurance costs in affordable housing projects these days. The delays also resulted in a deterioration of the relationship with the tenants and the owner. And with COVID, the project is currently facing a 25% rent collection loss. That also resulted in delays in rent income certifications. They need to be certified tenants in order to obtain the necessary tax credit equity that's syndicated by Richmond, the syndicator. They were originally foreseeing 80% of the tenants would qualify under the tax credit allocation. That would have resulted in $16 million in equity. At this point, only 65% of the tenants have been certified, so there is only $9.8 million left in equity to put into the project. Richmond, with the consent of their investor, was able to grant a forgiveness adjuster on the pay-in of about $1 million. This was the remaining loan funds available, so they'll be able to pay off HFA's short-term bonds, which are due next month, so that's also good news. They'll be able to make their mandatory redemption on the short-term bonds, and then we can proceed to conversion. But obviously, there are a lot of holes to still fill here. The project was a precursor to our Clean Energy Initiative program, which now incorporates a lot of our passive house components and incentives. So I'm happy to say that these measures are increasingly being used in preservation projects, and we'll continue to see more and more of this. In order to allow the investor to make the payment on the short-term bonds, and in order to position for permanent conversion, we are asking for the following additional subsidy to make the project whole. The agency is also providing 27 project-based vouchers to qualified tenants, and this will significantly help to stabilize the revenue in the project. HPD is amending its regulatory agreement to include the state's Section 610 legislation. That allows the PVV rent to go higher than the legal rents that are restricted by rent stabilization guidelines. The tenants don't pay this. This is, the tenants pay no more than 30% of their income, so this allows the rental subsidy to increase. And New York City is also providing assistance under its FEPS program. It's a rent supplement for families and children who receive cash assistance or have been evicted or facing eviction, lost their housing because of health or safety issues. Let me see if there's anything else that's important here. So basically, it's an $8 million request in additional subsidy. We're hoping we're not going to need all that $8 million. We're just asking for the authority to go up to that amount. As more tenants get online, more project-based vouchers are implemented, and as we get closer to conversion, we'll have a better idea as to what the reduction in the permanent loan will be for us to have to fill the gap with the subsidy. So 8.3 million, it was the original mortgage. Now we're projecting about 3 million, but we'll see where that finds up.
Okay. Thanks, Russell. Questions for Russell on this request?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. But just briefly, I noticed that 41 tenants are non-compliant that are being evicted currently. What is meant by non-compliance in this case?
Evicted for good, I forget the terminology, but they're
not paying rent.
Not paying rent, yeah, and without good cause. So they're refusing to be certified in some cases. I'm not sure the individual cases, but the owner's trying to certify as many qualified tenants as possible. Like I said, there's been a lot of hostility there over the past couple of years, resulting from
the next sense, the project's losing a 25% rent collection loss due to non-payment. So one would assume that there's a long period of time during which people are not paying rent and that they're in housing court. Russell, thanks. This is totally unrelated, but I want to note that it's helpful. I really like the way when you guys do the write-ups, the address is a link, so you can just click on the project address and go, boom, straight to the maps. Kind of helpful to locate these things. Technology gets better every day. Just don't ask Andy Sanfilippo. Okay, questions, comments? James.
So it's 15% short of the 80% that they're trying to get tenants certified, and the subsidy will be paid by an outside source, and that subsidy will decrease. So out of the 41 tenants that are being evicted, they're going to have to get new tenants in to be able to make up the difference of the 15%, depending on whether or not they'll have them out within the next 3 years. So what are they doing as far as the difference of that? And then once the subsidy leaves, is that owner going to put it back to the limits?
Right. So yeah, we're presenting the worst case scenario as it stands. So we're hoping that actually, as more eligible tenants get online, and with the project-based Section 8, that'll help stabilize the property. So we're expecting that the actual subsidy that goes in will be less than what we're asking for. There, 27 tenants on top of the ones that are already qualified should hopefully get us closer to that 80% mark. But we'll have to see how that plays out over the next few months.
And then the question becomes, if this is to assist families in need, those 41, where are they going to go?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're suggesting we're creating a homeless problem.
Oh, yeah, because more than half of the people that are in the building are now going to be homeless.
Yeah, the question is why they're not paying rents. Really.
Right. Have they already exceeded their extensions and they're just looking to evict them?
I am not sure. I'm not part of the asset management monitoring of the project, so I don't know exactly where they are in terms of why, qualifications and who's in what state. we're basically presenting a financing option based on the worst case scenario that we're seeing right now.
And we don't know why they're being evicted.
I don't.
Other than
I'm sure they're
non-payment.
Yeah, I'm sure we could probably find out. I don't know.
Can we look into that? Because, you know, optics are really important, as we all know. And to be, for this organization, for SONYMA, to be an agency, to be associated with putting people out on the street when we're supposed to be putting people into homes is obviously, at first, not good optics. I'm not quite sure where it falls in terms of policy activity. But when I first heard it, I thought we were just talking about a few, 41 people. For goodness sake, that's going to leave a mark. And so I would not suggest that you do anything differently than you proposed, because we have to trust the process. However, I would suggest that by the time we come back for our next meeting in May, that we get perhaps a better idea of exactly what's going on with this particular situation. And I would assume that by next meeting, everybody would not have been evicted already. So we're not just speaking in past tense. So
yeah, I would only add that, Riseboro is a nonprofit organization. They are a community-based organization. They are not obviously at all in line with their mission to be evicting people. And I have spoken to the executive director myself about this building and these issues, as I have many people on Russell's team and on the asset management side. So they are very frustrated and challenged by this, right? Obviously, it's not in their mission to be evicting tenants, but they have people who refuse to pay their rent, and that is not a sort of sustainable path for them. So I think happy to come back and provide more info at May. I just want to reinforce this is a very long-standing community-based organization for whom this is obviously a challenging situation.
I mean, there are no secrets in New York City, certainly. And, at some point, we as an agency should be able to have an answer in addition to, well, the people weren't paying their rent, so they were thrown out.
We can get more. I mean, as I said, I've spoken to them. We can come back with some more information on it. I just want to reinforce they are not a landlord who is seeking to evict people, right? They are stuck with a series of tenants who, for a very long period of time, have not paid, and they are frustrated by that as well.
This used to be Ridgewood Bushwick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're one of the leading providers of affordable housing in that area. Well, in Brooklyn, in that area of Brooklyn. So their mission is not certainly to evict people, but what would be helpful to know, I'm thinking of James's question, at least I'd feel better knowing, well, for the people that are evicted, what services is Riseboro or the city,
somebody,
what are they going to do to help them if in fact they actually get evicted, which could take forever. But
and the question is, are they refusing to pay or they can't pay?
I imagine it would be more the latter.
I mean,
and that's why
they're Section 8 eligible. They're Section 8 eligible.
Right.
These are Section 8 families.
30% of your income when you're low income is a lot of money out of your budget. I mean, we all know that
yes, but again,
30% requirement is a problem.
Most of the housing clients, they either get some sort of rental assistance.
They're getting Section 8.
Agencies that contribute to a portion, but they also ask residents to pay some portion, right, of their rent, but it's very minimal. But I think in this case, they will do any and everything they can before taking this step to evict someone. But we're seeing in a lot of our tax credit or supportive housing projects, people income qualify when they're coming in and then are not paying. So it's kind of like this mindset that kind of got into renters during the pandemic with the moratorium, that they were this energy that you did not have to pay. And I think this cancel rent movement and people thinking that there were going to be additional bailouts, and they have not materialized. And I think we're in a really precarious place, and that's why Riseboro has done everything they could, I think, to this point, and they have to take the step. And in order to get resources from the city, you have to take this action in order to get the back rent paid for the residents.
Oh, you can see the headlines, so I don't have to spell it out as we speak today. So at the end of the day, I understand exactly what you're saying, of course, but we are going to have to have a more, nuanced response in terms of that we're not just supporting throwing people out in the street.
Right.
because the New York Post does very short headlines, right? And there we go from there. So I'm just, I think we need to obviously think prospectively on what this is going to look like, sound like, and what it's going to do to the image of this organization that does so many good things, but all it takes is one punch in the nose, and all of a sudden things go the other way.
Okay.
I hate to point this out, but 41 tenants does not mean 41 individuals, it's 41 families, so it's actually
yeah, sure.
Right, fair enough.
Which adds to the problem. Sorry.
Okay, anything else? All the comments are helpful. Russell, thank you for the, you started saying you'd be brief, but it was complicated. It is complicated.
This is not a,
You got it right, my friend. Let's do what we got to do.
Yeah, just real quick. It's a great project. It is like, this was the retrofit in New York. Like, this became a very complicated project very fast. I think this like bodes for the idea of like working with NYSERDA is great, but I also think about the ability to think about how we do innovations in construction, but do this in some cases in places where we're not going to have tenant in place, where we're not going to do things that are complicated, because it makes it for a much more, and like whether we have a housing innovation lab in the state to try out these techniques and ways and do, it's exciting and it's amazing to do, but it can also, as we see, go south. So I think investing in the process of doing innovative construction techniques is also very important so that we can actually do this better, perhaps.
Right. Great. Thanks, James. Lauren, let's do it.
Now before the HFA board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Great. Thanks. Okay. We're going to go to 6. We're trying to speed this up as much as we can. Pardon the interruption. Resolution of the HFA members authorizing approval of the making of an HFA subsidy loan and an estimated amount of $9,100,000 for Joseph House in Staten Island.
Yes.
Back to Russell and to a new borough. It's a nice project.
Yes. Happy to continue with the quote-unquote normal request. Not a bailout request. This is Joseph House. It's an existing senior housing property. It's on Staten Island in West Brighton. We don't get a lot of preservation deals on Staten Island, though hopefully that's going to be changing over the coming months. Joseph House is a Section 202, HUD 202 designation for senior properties serving tenants 62 years or older. It houses 75 units, all affordable under HUD supervision, all with Section 8 project-based rental assistance. It was originally built in 1986. It went through a moderate renovation in 2011, financed with a HUD Section 223F loan that remains as a first mortgage on the property. So that we're coming in as a subordinate HFA subsidy for additional renovation, substantial renovation. Residents at Joseph House generally earn at or below 30% of the area median income for New York City. So the continued preservation and affordability of this property for seniors is not insignificant. The project is owned by Olivet St. Vincent's Housing Development Fund Corp. The sponsor is Sisters of Charity Housing Development Corporation. The owner provides a social service coordinator who also provides services to residents, including security, financial planning, social connections and counseling and assistance, community-based services. Amenities at the project include a community center, community kitchen, social service offices, shared laundry room, and on-site parking for residents and their visitors. The agency is being asked to provide an HFA subsidy of about $9.1 million to provide a substantial rehabilitation of the property. It includes energy efficiency upgrades to help further preserve and make the project more financially efficient for years to come. This is a good example, and the project I will present to follow, of our continuing strive to use alternative to tax-exempt volume cap financing to address preservation rehabilitation projects where we can further maximize our tools, increase amount of units that we can get to on the preservation side while saving our volume cap on the higher scale new construction projects. So the scope of rehab and energy efficiency here is expected to meet the Enterprise Green Communities standards, NYSERDA's low carbon for multifamily buildings program, and the agency's existing building requirement of at least 20% energy use reduction. It's not going full conversion to electric based on the recommendations of the energy consultant, and basically the gas-fired boiler system and hot water heaters would require additional invasive collateral work to the building envelope. They'd have to temporarily relocate the senior tenants, which did not really seem to be a desirable option. They can, however, retrofit these boilers to make them efficiency and then do other measures to prepare the project for electrification at a later date. They are doing a new heat pump system, a new VRF supply ventilation system, air sealing the windows and penetrations, replacement of all the plumbing fixtures, upgrades to all the existing electrical panels and services, also a new elevator. The building will be getting site work and other typical in-unit renovations to the kitchens and cabinets and appliances. We're also anticipating using some of our HTFC colleagues' weatherization home energy assistance program heat funding. We're still working out the budget for those items, which scope items will be eligible, but that's some of the typical energy efficiency measures that we could see in these projects where we'll be able to get some additional funding to put in. We'll finalize that amount before we get to the financing closing on the project. And just lastly, the project will continue to benefit from an Article 11 real estate tax abatement with the city, the project-based Section 8 rental assistance contract for another 20 years, and we will slap on a 40-year regulatory agreement to preserve the affordability of the project going forward.
Great. Russell, thanks. Any questions for Russell on this project in Staten Island? Good project, makes sense. Joyce?
Low-income housing tax credits associated with it.
Yeah, we figured subsidy is we have subsidy available for this kind of project. We have a senior subsidy program, and we figured it's actually a cost-effective way to address these issues without having to utilize bonds and tax credits or create a tax credit partnership and investment.
And complicates the underwriting.
It does.
Good. Thanks, Russell. Lauren, let's do it.
Now before the HFA board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Great. 7 is a resolution of HFA members authorizing and approving the making of an HFA subsidy loan in an estimated amount of $11,700,000 for Providence Hall and Schuyler Court apartments in Hudson, which is in beautiful Columbia County. Back to Russell.
All right, I'll be even quicker on this one. Similar to Joseph House in many ways in terms of how we're financing it. 2 properties that are located in Hudson. They're right downtown within walking distance of the train station. If anyone's familiar with Hudson, it's a beautiful, quaint little burg on the east side of the Hudson River. In recent times, it's become a very popular, increasingly desirable destination for those of a certain income. Just in a side note, I was on a train not too long ago where I overheard someone telling their friend on their way to Hudson that Hudson is the new Hamptons.
Port Hudson, right?
Right up from the river, as you approach the downtown, there are these 2 properties, Providence Hall and Schuyler Court. They're diagonally across from each other. They're HUD, all affordable Section 8 housing, there to stay, that we hope. Providence Hall is a single-story, 5-story single building with 100 units, built in '82 for seniors and disabled individuals. Schuyler Court, across the street, was built in 1979 for families, Section 8 families. They're townhome-style buildings, 5 of them that contain about 50 units. All of the residents at both of these properties are regulated under the HUD Section 8 Affordable Housing Program. They're covered by project-based rental assistance. The agency is being asked to provide a subsidy loan in the amount of $11.4 million to cover the acquisition of these properties and their rehabilitation. The seller of the properties has been anxious to sell. K&R Preservation, who is a team we've worked with on many similar types of acquisition rehab deals, is coming in to acquire the properties and rehabilitate them. They're a good group with us. We're providing the assistance to acquire the properties, and they'll be also serviced by Freddie Mac Senior Loan, serviced by PNC Bank. Doing so will help to continue to preserve the affordable housing in Hudson for another 40 years. The scope of work has existing components that are beyond their useful life, sustainability, energy efficiency measures that meets the agency's existing building guidelines will be implemented. Residents at these properties earn at or below 60% of the area median income. In Columbia County, that area median income is about $103,000 adjusted for family size. Gets a sense of the typical incomes there. Having these properties acquired and preserved will continue to be regulated, and we'll slap on our new 40-year regulatory agreement. Will hopefully preserve affordability in a place that's considered the New Hamptons.
I love your confidence in that you slap on a 40-year regulatory agreement, and you say, we won't have to revisit this project for 40 years because this investment now to upgrade a building built 42 years ago, this building is so well built, we're never gonna have to renovate it again. That's great. Love the confidence.
Well, the odds are we will not be the ones.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to be here in 40 years.
I'm with you.
About it.
I would say these buildings are in better shape than some of the other preservation projects that we're
There
getting.
is this 40-year thing. I mean, it's about the same. The Staten Island project we just looked at was built in the 80s, right? I mean, that's what.
No, it reminds me of the Mitchell-Lama program, though, where they thought 40 years was a long time.
40 years is a long time.
It wasn't.
Questions for Russell on this project in beautiful Hudson, New York, or the outskirts thereof on Route 9. All right, let's make it happen.
And now before the HFA board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the HFA board, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody. The next item is a SONYMA Restoration Fund item. We're going to get Dina Levy up to the stand, so to speak. It's approval.
Thanks, Russell.
Are we? I didn't look behind me to see if Dina's actually here. Oh, she is here. All right. And Dina's here too. Approval of the resolution authorizing grants to conduct outreach and onboard manufactured home communities to participate in SONYMA's upcoming personal property loan program with the goal of increasing home ownership in manufactured home communities. We went through this a couple of mobile home parks, okay? And, you guys use these fancy words. There's other words, but they're manufactured homes. Okay.
Yes. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Anika Nawabi, Director of Special Initiatives, working with Dina and Rachel. So in February, the board approved 5 awards to provide 5 organizations with a manufactured home ownership outreach grant. One of the awardees has requested to withdraw from the project because they have lost some staff and therefore cannot proceed with this program. They are the Veterans and Community Housing Coalition. So they are located in the North Country. The North Country had 2 applicants, Rebuilding Saratoga Together and this Veterans Housing Coalition. Therefore, what we wanted to do is to actually reallocate the money from the Veterans Coalition to Rebuilding Saratoga to up their grant by $20,000 so that they have the full $50,000 to fulfill the project in the North Country, as well as cover more of the North Country since they will be the only organization implementing it there. So we just would like to request board authorization to help reallocate this money and award $50,000 to Rebuilding Saratoga.
That sounds like a reasonable thing. Dina, what do you think?
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah. Could I just ask a question? Are we going to hold the Rebuilding Together Saratoga group to making sure that they spread themselves out
right
in an equitable way across the North Country? Because that's a lot of land to cover and a lot of mobile homes.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll help out here. So they each have milestones that reflect the size of the grant they're getting. So how many parks they touch, how many parks they sign up for this program. So in taking this award, they will double their projected milestones and then have to achieve them, which would also cover, I think it's Essex County for them. So they'll be going further north than they would have otherwise.
And is there, the 2 ways to get to the North Country from central New York and from the Saratoga is a lovely place, but you have to get up to Franklin, Essex, St. Lawrence.
Right.
Help me out, B, and you come all the way down to Onondaga, you come all the way down. So, you've got other providers in the state. Right, you're going this way.
Yeah. So it's actually just the line. So think of it from Saratoga all the way north, right? They will be covering St. Lawrence, all the counties you just named, Ken.
Yeah.
They will be covering those, which is not their normal territory, but they're willing to.
Because the other provider, I think, was in Clinton. They were out of Plattsburgh, right? That's Clinton County. So it's B's point is the mobile home parks are spread across the Adirondack Park and then north of the park up to the Canadian border and St. Lawrence Seaway. Right. So that's just these guys need a lot of allowance in their grant for gasoline because they're going to put a lot of miles on their car.
Right.
I have another cookie question is there any way that the Rebuilding Saratoga folks can work with the veterans folks? Is there any way that they can help with their capacity issue?
Yeah, so initially that was kind of the plan that both of them would work together to cover the entire North Country. However, I think Rebuilding Saratoga they're in communication. However, I'm not sure how much coordination is actually needed at this point because initially when Rebuilding Saratoga had applied, they applied for the full 50,000 amount and they did demonstrate a work plan that would cover the entire project.
Yeah, I would have just added, it's not really a technical assistance issue. It's not that they don't know what to do. They lost staff and I don't think they're prepared to replace them.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope to Bee's point, this work will be ongoing, right? And there'll be other, maybe not, there'll be other, to the extent that the organization that isn't willing to participate now, down the road, perhaps they can staff up and come back to the table.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Bee. Let's do it, Lauren.
Now before the SONYMA board is a resolution that was transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the first and second previously entered for the SONYMA board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is carried and the resolution's adopted.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Lauren's going to take the steps required for us to go into a brief executive session. Lauren, I don't know how to do this, but you do.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. After the executive session, will we still?
Yes, then we'll come back to public session.
One item, just point of personal privilege. When we come back.
When we come back, you got it. I'll make a note.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to go into executive session pursuant to Section 105F of the Open Meetings Law to discuss the financial, credit, or employment history of a particular corporation. I would like to remind people, staff is online to sign out, and you will get a heads up from Lillian when it's time to rejoin the meeting. If we can have a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
And we are in executive session.
Great. So you all know.
Do you only have 4? We only have 4 because we lost 2 people when Albany went off offline.
Yeah, they're done. Those guys hit a hard stop at 12.
We can't do HTFC.
So let's go back into public session and then do the 1 or 2 items we can do with the 4 that we have, yeah?
We can't do anything for HTFC.
Oh, so then so then we're done?
Well, we haven't done HTFC and they have items on their agenda, I think Becky will say. So if we could just very quickly do HTFC. They are bundling them so that we'll just have 2 votes which cover everything.
And we're done.
And then we'll be done.
Can we, as soon as we go back into opening session, close the SONYMA board?
We can, but we have a date conversation, and I think we're only on for 5 minutes. So maybe we could just do this so other people can leave, and then we'll close, because I don't think we're asking them to stay for more than about 5 minutes.
I'll follow your instructions, Lauren.
If that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. So why don't you get us back into public session, please?
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion and second from each board to go back into public session. So assuming the first and seconds previously entered, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We are back in public session, and I'd like to announce that no votes were taken in the executive session.
Great. We have we'll do the HTFC agenda items, right, Lauren?
Yes, let's move to the HTFC.
We'll move to the items to be considered by the Housing Trust Fund Corporation. These items are found in the Housing Trust Fund Corporation Board Book. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the board meeting held on March 14, 2024. The minutes shall be deemed approved, absent corrections from members and directors. Thank you, everybody. Number 2 is a resolution authorizing Community Development Block Grant Economic Development Program awards. And is this
Sarah?
Where is Sarah?
Did we lose Jesse and Chris? Because quorum is 6.
We have Ruthann, so we're right at quorum.
Quorum for HTFC is 6.
Well, then we're done.
Okay. We'll have to postpone these till next month.
We will have to ask people if these can wait 30 days. I don't know.
Oh no.
No, back here.
We don't have enough people.
We don't have quorum.
Jesse.
Lauren, there are procedures in the HTFC bylaws to vote for items without a meeting. We need every member to vote on them, but we can make that happen for any emergency items that cannot wait until May.
Okay. Do we do that by email?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wonderful.
Okay.
Problem solved.
Okay. Let's figure out how to do that.
Figure out how to do that.
We'll do, the next few days, we'll figure out
Just means
how to
everybody.
do emergency approval of the items that we need to do for HTFC
Yes,
by
anything we
email.
can push, we'll push. Anything that's emergency, we'll do by email.
Sounds good. That
All
should
right.
work.
Do that.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Okay, so that's
Thank
it?
you. Yeah. Sorry. We'll get all of that very quickly.
So we will.
So we'll close the meetings.
Yeah, because the rest of the items were all HTFC. I'm just checking HTFC. Sarah. And let's imagine then that those were items. Those were items 2 through 10, right? After the minutes. Okay, so we'll do those by email or whatever the bylaws enable us to do. 11 is the review of the seeker type 2 actions. 12 is a quarterly review of the Climate Friendly Homes Fund. 13 is review of the current energy procurements and contracts in the lobbying restricted period. Now, there being no further business of the HFTC board, except that which will be postponed.
I don't know if there's a recruiter required on the Climate Friendly Homes Fund, but I don't want to.
But we're not.
I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm not voting on anything. So
that's fine. Okay. We will ask Lauren, please, for motions and seconds to adjourn the HTFC meeting.
And I'm going to restate, please, that no votes were taken in executive session. I'm not sure that that was on the record.
Great.
So before we move to the, assuming the first and second previously entered for HFA, AHC, SONYMA, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. And the meeting adjourned. We're going to ask you to hold for one more second. The same thing for HTFC. Assuming the first and second previously entered for HTFC, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the meeting is adjourned. You heard earlier that there was going to be some question about a board date.
For May.
For May. The next meetings for these boards are scheduled for Thursday, May 16th, 2024. That date conflicts with the NYSAFA conference in New York City, and there are a lot of people who participate in NYSAFA, so we wanted to see with you if there's a possibility of changing that meeting to Tuesday, May 21st, which would be the following Tuesday.
Okay for me.
It's okay for me.
Good boy. Okay. The 21st.
Yeah, and let's send something around to all of the directors because we lost
we'll
some people here.
follow up on it to confirm with
But
people who aren't here, but it's helpful.
You can do it, B?
No.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let's we'll do something by email, like an email poll, and see if we can get everybody for a revised date for May. Because the NYSAFA conference obviously is the most important affordable housing event, and lots of the team will be there.
On the
So I can delete
21st,
this.
there's a conference at NYU Furman.
I can delete this.
Which one? Which is the 20?
The 16th. I can delete this.
Yes, that you can, because that's the NYSAFA conference, so we wouldn't have Ruth Ann.
Yeah, but on the 21st, there's the Furman Housing Voucher Conference at NYU.
Everyone's doing stuff in May. We'll send out a poll and we'll figure it out. We just wanted you to know the 16th doesn't look like it's going to work.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, have we dismissed everybody? Are we done?
We have closed
Lauren,
all
thank
of the
you.
board meetings.
Great. Meetings are adjourned.
And we will
Thank you,
follow up
everybody.
on the,
Long morning. Lots of good.
HTFC items for.
Thank you, B. Thank you, people in Albany, for your spirit into thin air.
Good to see you, Professor.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, James. Thank you, Paul.